Hello everyone, myself Gaurav Kulkarni, and today I'll be sharing some information regarding the Angular architecture. So, in terms to understand the Angular framework, one needs to understand the architecture. Architecture is nothing but a set. It's a art of building blocks or a set of building blocks. So, blocks is nothing but the type of code we are going to write. So to understand the architecture, one should know how all the process where from the way process where the process actually starts and how it flows the data towards the end for the execution purpose. So Angular framework is nothing but it is a MVC based framework, and MVC elaborate for model view and control. So all these technologies means model view and control are based in a single server and which uses the data from the users and fetch all the data in a single server and redirect to the user. So for the first part in the Angular architecture to understand, and which is the main base part, is a bootstrapping part. So bootstrapping is nothing but it's like a ignition to the car. Whenever we plug a key inside and start the ignition, it it uh, it sends a command to the engine to start, and that's how all the engine or all the vehicle will be start or ignited. So that's how the bootstrapping is works inside the Angular framework. So bootstrapping is like a class loader which loads all the information regarding the class. So you can find the bootstrapping file in the main.ts file, and main.ts file could be found inside the source folder. So whenever the first main component is the bootstrapping, which uh, which which actually starts the process of execution of data, then the second most important part is ng module. Ng module is nothing but Angular module. So Angular module can hold different types of data, like the component name, the module name. Here we can uh, we can refer the component is like as a class, and the module is like a package. So ng module holds all the data, and to work on and to work as manager, it it so ng module generally works as a manager of all the Angular activities, and preferably used for the compiler context. So to work the ng module needs few list or libraries also to work in a proper manner. So it received data from imports, export, provider, services, and declarations also. So import is nothing but a set of libraries or extra functionalities or dependencies one can one is needed to act. So and there is another list called as export. So export is also a list, but in adverse effect like as import. So export can export itself export can export the list or the data the export file can contain to the specific ng module, but you cannot export the data before it is imported. So the import and export are both dependent on each other. Whenever you have to export the data, you must import the data from somewhere. Like there is another module called as declaration. So declaration is nothing but it's a combination of component and template. So component is nothing but component can hold data itself, and template is like as HTML work. So whenever the component has to share the data to the template, it is called as a property binding. So and whenever the template fetches data from the component, is called as event binding. So suppose event binding, we could we will check what is meant by event binding. So suppose in a you have visited a web page where you have found several types of buttons or login buttons. So whenever you clicks on any button, so the code of the button is written inside the template as in HTML language. So whenever you click on the button, the event handler will generate, and event handler will raise the request and fetch the method written for the clicks of the button from the component itself. So that's how the binding works. Uh, and there is another component called as angular markup. So angular markup, as you know, we cannot write loops or logic inside the HTML language. So here angular markup is used to writing logics or loops inside the HTML. So whenever there is another component called as providers, which sends or receive the data to the ng module. So provider is nothing but provider consists a class or consists of service classes, and it does not contain the actual classes, but it's only store its blueprint. So whenever a component requires any special kind of service or any dependencies, it will reach to the uh, injector, and injector will check if the service required from the component is existed or not. If the services existed inside the injector, it will pass the instance of that service to the component class, and this is called as the dependency injection. So if the service is not inside the injector will fetch the service or fetch the service class from the provider. So provider only contains the actual class name of service. It does not contain the actual service in its physical form. So the provider will pass the service class name to the injector, and injector will imply the service name and create instance of it, and then passes the instance to the component itself. That's how all the architecture works. So uh, you can uh, a web page can have as many as wanted modules and components. So the base module in the Angular framework is app module. So, it is a root module. So whenever you loads the web page, the first index.html file will be read, and this will redirect the user to the app module file. That's it for